The Kentucky Wildcats and Dan Hurley had a cup of coffee earlier this year, and nothing really came of it. But now that Hurley may be potentially leaving for the Los Angeles Lakers, it could affect the Wildcats in a very positive way.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to discuss what Dan Hurley potentially leaving his job with the UConn Huskies for the Los Angeles Lakers could mean for Kentucky basketball. Could they possibly pull away a couple of high school commits or maybe even a transfer portal commitment from the Huskies? Going to talk about that on today's episode alongside some official jersey numbers for the Wildcats, some numbers that we have not seen in a very, very long time, and some numbers that, frankly, I don't know if we've ever seen in a blue and white jersey. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms, and if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribed to the show, and if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Dan Hurley, according to multiple reports, is being zeroed in on as the Los Angeles Lakers' number one candidate to become their next head coach. And according to various other reports, Hurley, his wife, they have come out to LA. They are currently, probably at the time of this recording, still in a meeting with the Los Angeles Lakers, and he, according to other reports, will be mulling this offer over throughout the weekend. So we have a couple of days here to speculate as to whether or not Hurley would leave his job with the UConn Huskies for the Lakers. In case you did not see it, earlier this offseason, the Wildcats desperately tried to pull Hurley and Scott Drew away from their jobs, ended up going with Mark Pope after both of them decided to stay at their respective programs. Hurley was offered a ton of money by the Kentucky Wildcats. Unfortunately, Wildcats were not able to pull him away. Fortunately for Kentucky fans, I feel like we all are very, very excited with the direction that Mark Pope is taking the program. In just a month, already has a 12-man roster, which we're going to talk about here today. But Dan Hurley has been contacted by the Lakers, and they can offer even more money than Kentucky ever could. It's an NBA job. It's a job that, frankly, Hurley has said that he's wanted. He wants to make a move to the NBA at some point. And you would like to think that this would be the perfect opportunity to do so, especially considering that his family seems to be on board with the thought of moving from Connecticut to LA. Now, if this does happen, and it's looking like a pretty 50-50 split here, I would assume if I were in his shoes, I would take the job, but that's just me. If he does end up taking the job, if that's the decision that he makes, I believe this could positively impact Kentucky basketball, and frankly, I think it could positively impact college basketball. Looking at Kentucky's roster, you have 12 different players. You have point guard Lamont Butler, point guard Kerr Kriisa, combo guard Travis Perry will probably play point, shooting guard Colin Chandler, guard/forward Kobe Brea, guard/forward Otega Owe, small forward Trent Noah, small forward Jackson Robinson, power forwards Andrew Carr and Ainsley Almanor, and then centers Amari Williams and Brandon Garrison. At this point, every position on the roster is pretty much filled, and if you want to go by position, you've got 3 players that could play point guard, you've got 3 players that could play shooting guard, you've got 3 players that could play small forward, you've got 2 players that could play power forward, and you've got 2 that could play center. And really, it does come down to how Kentucky wants to do their rotations with, I think, a lot of different wings added to this rotation that frankly kind of all do one thing really, really well, which is shoot the basketball. Brea, Owe, Robinson, Noah. I mean, they've got 4 different guys there that could play small forward that you can only put one out there on the court at a time, and you can really rotate about 2 in if you really want to kind of get deep in the rotation with other players, but that's a conversation for another episode. Point being here, there is really one position that Kentucky does not have filled like to the brim perfect. Like, hey, this is a really, really, really high profile guy that we're going to be having start at this position. And frankly, I think that position is shooting guard. Now, this may not come to be true depending on what Kentucky wants to do throughout their practices. For instance, they may want to play Kobe Brea exclusively at shooting guard, in which case all of their concerns are met at that position. I want to make that very clear here before we dive into this discussion. Kobe Brea, if they want to play him at shooting guard instead of small forward, then he would be able to fill that position and Kentucky would be fine. Frankly, I think that if you went into the season today with this roster, I wouldn't have any issues with it at all. In fact, I would want to put Brea at the 2. I'd put Robinson at the 3. I would probably bring Ortega Dawe off the bench. Carr would be my 4. Williams would be my 5. And then I'd let Carissa and Butler battle it out for the point guard spot. I think that this is a very good roster as it stands today. But if you want to play Brea off the bench at small forward, if you want to play Dawe off the bench at small forward and power forward, because he played a little bit of the 4 during his time in Oklahoma during smaller rotations, I think that you could absolutely go out and get one more player at combo guard, or at shooting guard, I should say. And UConn has a couple of different players that are currently committed to their program that if Hurley were to leave, I think would consider transferring out. I think Aidan Mahaney of St. Mary's, who transferred into UConn, took a visit to Kentucky. I think he could be somebody that Kentucky kind of wraps back around to and tries to go get if he does re-enter the transfer portal. At this point in the process with the transfer portal, if these players were to decide to leave UConn, it's going to be an interesting conversation for you and I to have about where these kids start to look, especially when it comes to NIL deals. At this point in the process, most big-time programs with big-time money have already spent that money constructing the majority of or their entire roster. There's not a ton to go around. So if these players want to leave what they've got at UConn, both in terms of money and in terms of role, if they do decide to leave, do they have to settle for less money or a smaller position at a big-time school if that's where they want to go? A place like Kentucky, I think, would be open to having somebody like Aidan Mahaney in their backcourt. Do they need Aidan Mahaney? Not necessarily. Again, like I said, this 12-man rotation, I am very excited about. The fact that you can have multiple shooters out on the floor at a time, and at your shooting guard and small forward spot, you have 6'6" and 6'7" potentially. If you wanted to go all shooters lineup, you could have Kirk Carissa, Kobe Brea, Jackson Robinson, Andrew Carr, Amari Williams. Not only is that a tall lineup, that is a very, very lethal lineup from the outside. I mean, just very, very difficult to beat that in terms of three-point shooting on another roster in college basketball. Mahaney would be the first player I think Kentucky would look at if UConn were to start to lose some of these guys. The second player would be Liam McNeeley. Does he even consider leaving UConn if Dan Hurley leaves? I don't know. I think that is very dependent on who the Huskies would hire as their next head coach, which at this point in the process would be very difficult. According to different people online, really, honestly, UConn's best bet at this point would be to either promote an assistant or go look at Auburn's Bruce Pearl. And Bruce Pearl's not leaving Auburn, Alabama. You're going to have to promote an assistant coach. Can they convince those kids? Can they convince kids like Liam McNeeley or Aidan Mahaney to stay if Hurley leaves? That's going to be very tough. Not to mention a couple of different really solid players, 4-star guys. Ahmad Noel, a 6-foot combo guard who's really, really good at the point guard position. Isaiah Abraham, a 6'7" small forward, top 100 player nationally. Another transfer, Terrace Reed Jr., a 6'10" senior. That was very highly rated coming out of high school, averaged 9 points per game for the Wolverines just a season ago to go along with 7 rebounds and 1.4 blocks in his sophomore year. UConn's got some very solid players that they're going to have to try and desperately hang on to if Dan Hurley does choose to leave this thing. McNeeley and Mahaney would be my 2 guys you go to. McNeeley, a 6'7", 210-pound small forward. I think you could bump him up to shooting guard if you wanted to get really weird with it. Or you could have Brea play shooting guard, Otega play shooting guard, Chandler play shooting guard. And then you could have Robinson at small forward. You could have McNeeley as the backup small forward to rotate in. And then you could have Trent Noah coming and Travis Perry coming off the bench at both their point/combo/small forward/power forward positions. I think Noah, you could slide him all the way down to the 4 and whatever in-game lineup you wanted to have. But you don't, again, I want to reiterate this, want to make this very clear. You don't need a McNeeley or a Mahaney. But if Hurley does leave, it's going to be on the table. It's more than likely going to be on the table for some team out there in college basketball. And I think Kentucky would be wise to, at the very least, circle back on both of these prospects that they were recruiting earlier this year. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Should Kentucky, if Dan Hurley leaves, pursue what I think is the greatest shooter in this year's class, in this high school class, and a scoring combo guard from St. Mary's? Should they leave it alone? Or will Hurley actually leave to begin with? Again, we're going to get about 48 hours to talk about this before we get a true answer. So let me know what you think in the comments below. At LockedOnUK on Twitter is where you can find me. Okay, let's talk a little bit about jersey numbers. Let's talk a little bit about what these different numbers are going to be. And let's speculate on what maybe some of these players that have not already arrived on campus, what are they going to wear for the Kentucky Wildcats this upcoming season? I want to talk about that in just a second. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. You can keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, continuing along here on the Friday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. If you want to join the Locked On Kentucky Discord, which is just a place for anybody in Big Blue Nation to talk about what's going on with Kentucky basketball, Kentucky football, Kentucky baseball, anything going on with UK athletics, it is a place to go for all of us to just kind of hang out on chat. I think there's 227 of you in there right now, which is just crazy. You can find that link at LanceDaw_ on Twitter. It is pinned at the very top of my profile to go join up the Discord. Again, at LanceDaw_ over on Twitter is where you can find that link. Okay, so we have some confirmed jersey numbers for the Kentucky Wildcats this upcoming season, and I wouldn't normally talk about this in depth, but because of the new rule that the NCAA is putting in college basketball this season, and because so many different players here are wearing unique numbers for the Wildcats, I figured it would be something that we need to talk about. So just for reference, this year in college basketball, you know how players have not been allowed to wear jersey numbers. I believe it's 6 through, I want to say, They're not allowed to wear numbers like 6, 7, 8, 9. They're not allowed to wear numbers they're not allowed to wear those numbers on their jersey, period. Like, regardless of whether it's just by themselves or like with another number, like they can't wear like 89 or something like that. Well, this year, that is being taken away. So you can literally get any number you want, 1 through 99, if I'm not mistaken. And some Kentucky players are taking advantage of that. We'll start at the top here. Otega Dawe is not just going to wear number 0, he's going to wear 00 for the Kentucky Wildcats, which, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Marcus Lee was the most recent guard or most recent player for the Kentucky Wildcats to wear that number. For reference, Dawe wore number 3 during his time at Oklahoma. So switching from 3 to 00, honestly, I think it's very fitting for him, especially considering his kind of 3-and-D background. I think it fits him, his frame, his personality, everything perfectly. I love this number for Dawe. Lamont Butler is going to be wearing number 1 for the Kentucky Wildcats. Going to be wearing number 1 in the blue and white this season, which is really, really cool. During his time at San Diego State, Lamont Butler, if I can actually get this to pull up here properly. Lamont Butler, yes, he wore number 5. I didn't want to pull that out of my notes and it be incorrect because I wrote it down without looking it up. Good job, me. Jackson Robinson will wear number 2 like he did with the BYU Cougars. So very standard there for Butler and Robinson, but both number switches for Dawe and Butler. And then you get into the fun part. Kerr Kriisa said that he was going to wear number 77 for Kentucky. Either the SEC or the NCAA must have nixed that because he is going to be wearing number 7, not 77, but 7, according to his locker room setup at Rupp Arena. So Kerr Kriisa wearing number 7 for the Kentucky Wildcats. Otega Dawe wearing number 00. And then Trent Noah. How about this? We've got some very unique numbers on this roster. Trent Noah wearing number 9 for Kentucky. It's going to be so weird to see some of these players out there wearing numbers like 7 and 9. At some point in the future, we're going to get players that wear things like number 17, number 19, number 18. It's going to be very, very different than some things that we've seen for a very, very long time. But Trent Noah wearing number 9 for the Kentucky Wildcats. Travis Perry wearing number 11 for the Kentucky Wildcats, as he did in high school. Big fan of John Wall is Travis Perry. Absolutely love this number here from Perry. Brandon Garrison, like he did at Oklahoma State, will wear number 10. And Amari Williams, much like he did at Drexel, is going to wear number 21. So Dawe will wear 00, Butler number 1, Jackson number 2, Kriisa number 7, Noah number 9, Perry number 11, Garrison number 10, and Amari Williams number 21. We could sit here and speculate on what some of these other numbers may be. For the Wildcats, for instance, I would be very surprised if Kobe Brea does not wear number 4. It's something that he's worn for a long time. It's something that means a lot to him. It's very important to him. Andrew Carr, I'm actually not quite sure what Andrew Carr will do with his number at this point because of the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, he wore number 3 during his time or during his visit to Kentucky. And also, he wore number 11 during his time at Wake Forest, and that's already been taken by Travis Perry. So he's going to have a new number. My guess is he could be 3, but a lot of different players wore number 3 during their visit with UK. So I'm not quite sure what Andrew's going to do for his number. It's going to be interesting to follow that. Colin Chandler also has yet to announce his number. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what he would pick. Ainsley Almanor has also yet to announce his number. I think he wore number 21 during his time. No, he wore number 5 during his time at FDU. So he could probably be in line to snatch that number up as well. But who knows? Dawe switching from 00 to from 3 to 00 with nobody else taking number 3 on the roster. So we'll see how it all pans out. But I think it's very, very cool. I think it's really, really cool that we get to see, first of all, Owe switch to 00, but Carissa and Noah wearing numbers that we have not seen in a very, very long time in college basketball. Number 7 and number 9. Perry's going to wear number 11 because he loves John Wall. We've got different players on this roster that have yet to decide their number. Maybe they'll go with something creative and funky like Noah and Carissa have. Who knows? But I'm very excited about it. Let me know what you think in the comments below about the jersey numbers, about Dan Hurley potentially leaving for Los Angeles, what it could mean for UK. Give all of your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_, and you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all on Monday for another episode. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.